Okay, so now I want to get into something that's a little bit more complicated than just my basic examples. So let's start with just the linear equation formula, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. So you can learn a lot of information by being able to tell what one of these terms is. So let's say that you're given 2 points on the graph, right? Let's say that you've got 3, 3, 0, and then you've got, say, 5, 2. You could find the slope from just this, actually. And you can actually find the y-intercept as well, by figuring out where y equals 0. So we're actually able to tell, or actually, no. This would have to be 0 and this would have to be 3 to find that. So we actually don't know where the y-intercept is, but we can figure it out. So let's try to find b, which is the y-intercept. So to find the slope, we have to find what m equals. So this is found using a formula. The final term of y minus the initial term of y over the final term of x minus the initial term of x. So this is kind of a freaky equation. If you've never done this before, I'm sure you have. You probably know what this is, but if you don't, that's okay. This is just basically telling you the rate of change between these 2 points, and it's just plugging numbers in. So to find the slope, let's say that this is our initial, and then this is our final point. So you just plug this in. So remember that the second y term and the second x term are the final. So let's plug this in. So the final term of y, if you remember that the coordinates are, x, y, the final term of y is going to be 2. The initial term of y is going to be 0, because this is our initial y term. The final x term is 5, and the initial x term is 3. So let's just subtract. You get 2 over, oh, look at that, 2. So actually our slope is 1. So we can imagine this equation being 1x, or you can just write it as x, because it'd be x times 1, which is just x, plus b. So how can we find our y-intercept? So we can figure out what our y-intercept is by plugging in a number for y and x. So I am going to blank here a little bit because I'm trying to do all of this shit in my head. Oh, that was weird. But how about we just plug in these 2 terms into Desmos for some simplicity. I actually had a failed attempt at recording because I end up losing my trail of thought, and then it makes the video a whole lot worse. It makes it almost unwatchable. Okay. Final. Initial. So here's our 2 points, and we determined that the slope is 1. And if you remember rise over run, we can remember that if our slope is 1, our rise it will be 1, and then our run will be 1. So if we do that, you can go up here to here. So that's up 1, then to the right 1, up 1, to the right 1. So you can actually find that there would be another point right at x4 and y1, but we're not going to worry about that right now. So let's type this in. So if you notice, we have an x-intercept at 3, which tells us that the graph itself is moved over by 3 units. So this is our slope, and then if we move this over over 3 units, and I'll explain how this stuff works later on. But if we move it over, we can see that yes, when the slope is 1, the line's going to intersect at both of these points. And then our y-intercept is going to be -3. So you would be able to find out that if we were to find b, it would actually end up equaling -3. So let's try to write an equation for this. You can write it as y equals x parentheses -3. And look at that. Doesn't that seem right? Because I totally didn't just copy it off of this. But this tells us that the x-intercept is -3. It also tells us that we're moving the line itself over by 3 units to the right. So let me try to attempt to explain quadratics as if I'm a teacher. This will probably be kind of hard for me, so bear with me here. So if you remember inputs and outputs, this is a quadratic equation. You can also visualize it as a function of x where x is equal, or the function is equal to x squared. But to keep it simple, I'm just going to write the function as y. So if you remember, we can visualize this by plugging in any number into this y to find an answer for this. And usually the simplest way to do that is to find what x equals when y equals 0. So if y equals 0, we get 0 equals x squared, and the square root of 0 is 0, of course. So x is going to equal 0 when y equals 0. So you get a coordinate of 0, 0. And this can be proven when I just type it in, of course. So when y is equal to 0, x will be equal to 0 too. So if we move this equation down, this is where it gets a little bit more confusing. So by subtracting 2, I'm moving the whole graph down by 2 units, which if you notice how this function works, it's like a valley. And if we move it down, we're going to actually have 2 x-intercepts. So let's imagine again when y is equal to 0, our function is going to look like this, where 0 equals x squared minus 2. So let's remember our algebra, where we add 2 to both sides to get rid of this -2. and you get 2 equals x squared. And then how do we get rid of this exponent again? That's right, we would take the square root of both sides. So square root of 2 equals the square root of x to the second. And since there's an exponent here and a square root here, you cancel them out. And since there's actually 2 sides to this graph where the line intersects twice, we have to recall that this would actually not be our answer. This would be our answer, where there's a positive value for the square root of 2 and a negative value for the square root of 2. So let's look at this. We get this decimal here and this decimal here. So let's square this. We get approximately 2. Very, very, very close to 2. And then the positive value for that is also very, very, very close to 2. So this value, 1.41, blah, 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 is the square root of 2, which makes this answer correct. So I'm going to go look for something even more difficult. I actually need to figure out how to pause a video on how to pause. Okay. I'm very scared because this is stop. Because last time I clicked this, it actually just... Hold on, so... I do not have... Bro. Dude, this is so ass. This is just a whole different thing now. Okay, I'm gonna right click this. See what happens. Okay, nothing happens there. Control P. Oh, that's print. Okay, hold on. This is... Oh, I could do this. Bro. I just took a screenshot, bro. Who is this? Okay, I'm gonna have to fucking stop this video, bro.